It starts the same way every time. A young man goes out for a night of fun with friends, but never makes it home. Days or weeks later, his body is pulled from a river or lake. The police call it a tragic accident, an alcohol-fueled drowning. Case closed. But lurking at the edge of these death scenes, a chilling clue keeps turning up. A simple smiley face spray-painted on a nearby wall, under a bridge or by the water's edge. Coincidence? Or the calling card of a killer? Over the last 2 decades, dozens of college-age men have vanished under eerily similar circumstances, only to be found dead in bodies of water. Most were popular, athletic, successful students' sons, brothers, friends with bright futures ahead. They disappeared after nights out at bars or parties. Officially, their deaths have been ruled accidental drownings. But a growing number of investigators and parents are convinced something far more sinister is at play. They call it the smiley face killer theory. The idea that these young men didn't die by accident at all, but were targeted and murdered by a hidden menace stalking the night. The term smiley face isn't just a nickname. In case after case, when private investigators combed the areas where these men went missing, they discovered graffiti of a smiley face near the water, as if someone was marking the death site. In at least a dozen different cities in multiple states, the grim pattern repeated. A smiling graffiti figure drawn in different colors and styles watching over the scene of a drowning. To many, it seemed like a sick signature left by whoever or whatever was responsible. A retired New York City detective named Kevin Gannon, along with Anthony Duarte and criminal justice professor Lee Gilbertson, first noticed this pattern in the late 1990s. They were struck by how unusual and specific these deaths were. Young men, often star athletes or honor students, vanishing after a night of drinking, then turning up in rivers hundreds of miles apart. And near some of their bodies, that unsettling smiley face image, almost taunting in its innocence. Could it really be a coincidence? Seasoned investigators like Gannon didn't think so. Gannon had worked one of these cases himself back in 1997, the disappearance of Patrick McNeil, a 21-year-old college student in New York City. McNeil left a bar one winter night and was later found dead in the East River. At the time, McNeil's death was ruled a probable accident. But something about it gnawed at Detective Gannon. He promised McNeil's parents he would not rest until he found out what happened to their son. As years went on, Gannon started seeing McNeil's case as the first in a string of disturbingly similar tragedies. He and his team compiled over 40 cases from 1997 through the 2010s that fit the pattern. Young men, vanished after a night out, later found in water. Too many to ignore. The more Gannon and Duarte dug, the more convinced they became that these were not isolated accidents. They theorized that a serial killer or a network of killers was prowling college towns and city streets, targeting these men and making their deaths look like drownings. Perhaps the drownings were staged to fool police. Perhaps the victims were grabbed, drugged, even held captive and then dumped in the water days later. In fact, in several cases the evidence didn't line up with an immediate drowning. For instance, Dakota James, a 23-year-old in Pittsburgh, vanished on a cold January night in 2017. His body was recovered in a river 40 days later, yet medical examiners noted it showed minimal decomposition, far less than expected after so long in the water. Gannon's team believed that's because Dakota, and others like him, may have been injected with a date rape drug like GHB and kept alive or preserved for some time before being dumped in the river. Chillingly, standard autopsies don't usually test for GHB, so if a predator used it to knock out these victims, it would leave little trace. It's a nearly perfect crime scenario. The killers stay one step ahead of the authorities, their work written off as unfortunate accidents. And then there's that smiley face. Investigators found one painted on a drain tunnel in Iowa near where a college student's body had been found. Another on a tree in Minneapolis by the Mississippi River. Another on a wall in Pittsburgh under a bridge. The faces weren't identical. Some were spray-painted in orange, others in white or yellow, some large, some small. Sometimes the face had devil horns graffitied on, other times it was just a simple circle, 2 eyes, and a grin. But to Gannon and his fellow detectives, this was no coincidence. They believed these symbols were a signature, a killer, or killers, proudly claiming responsibility for the death. Like a macabre smile saying, "Got another one." By 2008, Gannon and Duarte went public with their smiley face killer theory on national television, igniting a firestorm of controversy. Could it be true? Could a band of murderers be roaming from state to state, hunting young men and making it look like the victims simply slipped and drowned? It sounds like the plot of a horror movie, a shadowy gang with a sinister symbol, as one journalist dubbed it, but the retired detectives insist it's reality. They even wrote a book on drowning forensics, claiming many of these supposed drownings show signs of foul play if you look closely. In one case, a victim pulled from the water had bind marks on his arms, as if he'd been tied up. In another, a victim's body was found upstream from where he supposedly fell in, a virtual impossibility. These clues, the detectives argue, get brushed aside or explained away individually, but when you connect the dots across dozens of cases, a terrifying picture emerges. Still, the officials in these cities don't see it, or don't want to see it. The FBI publicly stated that after reviewing the evidence, they found no proof of any serial killer at work, calling most of the deaths unfortunate accidents related to alcohol. Local police departments from New York to Wisconsin have largely written off the smiley face graffiti as a coincidence, random vandalism in urban areas that happened to be near where a body was found. A federal report and independent researchers even labeled the smiley face killer idea a myth and urban legend, noting that smiley graffiti is common and not always freshly painted at the time of the deaths. They pointed out that drowning homicides are actually very rare, and that cold water can preserve a body, perhaps explaining cases like Dakota James without invoking a murder. To the authorities, all these tragedies, as heartbreaking as they are, do not add up to a grand conspiracy, just a string of nights gone wrong, a mix of youth, booze, and bad luck. Yet the smiley face killer theory will not die. Gannon and his team claim that law enforcement is too quick to close these cases. They suspect there might even be a cover-up, or at least a stubborn refusal to reopen investigations that were once deemed accidents. Admitting that a serial killer or killers has been active all this time right under everyone's nose would be a nightmare for police, an admission that they missed a monster, or many, operating in plain sight. Some parents of the victims, initially hopeful for the theory, have grown frustrated with the lack of concrete proof. Others, like the father of one alleged victim, insist there were too many oddities in their son's death to accept the official story. These families live in agony, caught between grieving a tragic accident and fearing that a murderer is out there laughing at the law. Could there really be a network of killers working together across different cities, sharing a twisted modus operandi? Imagine the coordination it would take, an underground coalition of predators communicating in secret, linked by some dark ideology or thrill of the kill. They target a type, young, strong men, perhaps out of envy or for the challenge. Some theorize these killers may lurk in bars, slip drugs into drinks, then follow their prey into the night. Others wonder if the smiley face symbol indicates involvement in some hidden dark web cult, or even a secret society of killers. It sounds far-fetched, like a conspiracy too evil to be true. And maybe it is. But then we remember the grieving families, the strange coincidences, the nagging questions left unanswered. Let's pause and look at one case that fuels this mystery. Minneapolis, Minnesota, Halloween night 2002. 21-year-old Chris Jenkins leaves a downtown bar in costume, celebrating with friends. He never makes it home. 4 months later, his body is discovered in the Mississippi River, still wearing his Halloween costume. Police initially say Chris, heavily intoxicated, fell or jumped into the river and drowned. Another sad accident. But his parents and friends weren't convinced. Chris was a strong swimmer and something just felt off. Years later, after relentless pressure, Minneapolis police did something rare. They reopened Chris Jenkins's case. New witness statements emerged, including a jailed informant who claimed Chris was murdered. In 2006, the authorities changed the cause of death from unknown drowning to homicide. Officially, they haven't named who killed him. In fact, not far from where Chris's body was found, under a bridge, graffiti of a smiley face was reported. Was it the killer's crude signature, left for those who know to find, or just a random tag in a city full of graffiti? The truth remains frustratingly out of reach. For every case like Chris Jenkins that gets re-examined, dozens more remain labeled no foul play. From La Crosse, Wisconsin, where at least 8 college men drowned in the Mississippi over a decade, to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where multiple young men like Dakota James and Paul Kochu vanished and later turned up in rivers, the pattern persists. In La Crosse, police even launched extra patrols along the river during bar hours, hoping to prevent another drowning. It's as if even they recognized something was happening, even if they wouldn't call it murder. And in many of these cases, when volunteers and family search teams scour the area, they keep finding that damn smiley face image nearby. Faded or fresh, spray-painted or etched, it's always there somewhere. Each time it's found, the debate flares up again. Accident or homicide? Random chance or evil design? The smiley face killer theory straddles the line between fact and folklore. Investigative TV shows and podcasts have picked it up, drawn by the tantalizing mystery. A 2019 docu-series called Smiley Face Killers: The Hunt for Justice followed Gannon and his team as they chased clues from city to city. They interviewed grieving families and even recovered evidence they claim police overlooked. The more they hunted, the more questions emerged. Why would someone or a group do this? Why target healthy young men, the kind who usually don't end up drowning? Serial killers typically choose victims they can easily overpower or have specific motives. The idea of a roaming gang of serial killers who prey on college men flips the script on everything we think we know about criminal patterns. It's unnerving, which is exactly why some experts dismiss it. One prominent criminal profiler called the theory ludicrous, saying it doesn't fit known serial killer behavior at all. Random graffiti, he says, is being misread as a sign from a phantom killer. Human brains look for patterns. Maybe we're seeing one where none exists. And so, we're left in a fog of uncertainty. Is the smiley face killer real, or have we been chasing ghosts painted on riverbanks? On one hand, you have grieving families and dogged detectives uncovering strange clues, unexplained bruises, mysterious drawings, timelines that don't add up. On the other hand, you have officials urging that sometimes tragedies happen in clusters, that chance can weave a pattern we desperately misinterpret in our search for meaning. After all, the thought of a deadly cabal lurking in the night is almost too horrifying to accept. It's easier to say there is no killer, to chalk it up to misfortune. But then, another son goes missing after a night out, and another smiley face appears on a wall, and we have to wonder. What if the smiley face killer or killers are out there laughing at us? What if these accidents are really the perfect crime spree, hiding in plain sight? For now, the smiley face killer remains only a theory, unproven, unconfirmed, and officially denied. But the next time you walk by a river at night and see a faint smiley face drawn on the concrete, you might find yourself looking over your shoulder. Because the scariest part of this whole mystery is what we don't know. Are these drownings just tragic coincidences, or is something even darker at play right beneath the surface?